The bridge of the human ship Harmony was quiet, except for the soft hum of machines. Commander Deho sat in his captain's chair, reading reports from the night shift. His coffee had gone cold hours ago, but he kept the cup nearby anyway. Space travel meant long hours and longer nights. The silence broke when a sharp beeping sound filled the bridge. Officer Hyjin looked up from her navigation station, her fingers moving quickly across the glowing screen in front of her. "Commander, we have an incoming transmission," she said, her voice tight with concern. "It's a distress signal, but the language is not human." Deho set down his coffee cup and walked over to her station. The ship's computer was already working to translate the alien words. Red warnings flashed across multiple screens as the message came through. "This is Captain Veltar of the research ship," whispered Dawn, the translated voice said through the speakers. "We are trapped in the Crimson Void. Our engines have failed, and life support is failing. We have 37 crew members aboard, including children. Please, anyone who can hear this, we need help." The bridge crew exchanged worried looks. Everyone in space knew about the Crimson Void. It was a massive area of twisted space where gravity worked in impossible ways. Ships that went in rarely came out. Those that did return were usually empty hulks with no survivors. Engineer Borum looked up from her control panel. "Commander, I'm reading massive gravitational waves from that region. Whatever's happening there, it's getting worse by the hour." Deho walked back to his chair, his mind racing. The Crimson Void was 14 light-years away from their current position. Even at maximum speed, it would take them almost a day to reach it. More importantly, the Galactic Council had strict rules about the Void. No rescue missions were allowed. Too many ships had been lost trying to save others. The distress signal came through again, weaker this time. Captain Veltar's voice sounded desperate as he spoke. "Our hull is breaking apart. The gravitational forces are tearing us apart piece by piece. We estimate 6 hours before complete life support failure. If anyone receives this message, please remember that we tried to push the boundaries of science for the good of all species." Communication Officer Kyung Ho turned in his chair to face the commander. "Sir, Galactic Command has strict orders about the Crimson Void. No ship is allowed within 2 light-years of the boundary. They consider any rescue attempt to be suicide." Deho stood up slowly. He looked around the bridge at his crew. These men and women had served with him for 3 years. They had explored unknown worlds together, faced dangers that would terrify most people, and always watched each other's backs. He knew what they were thinking because he was thinking the same thing. "Helm, set course for the Crimson Void," he ordered. "Maximum warp speed." "Sir," Kyung Ho said carefully, "the Council will not approve this mission. We could face court-martial if we proceed without authorization." "Then it's a good thing we're not asking for permission," Deho replied. "We're going to bring those people home." Science Officer Tai Young activated his sensors and began scanning the area around the void. "Commander, the gravitational readings are unlike anything I've seen before. The space-time distortion is creating pockets where normal physics don't apply. Some areas show time moving backwards. Ship's engines roared to life as the Harmony jumped into warp. The stars outside the viewscreen stretched into lines of light as they raced toward the most dangerous region of known space. Bioram pulled up engineering reports on her screen. "I'm reinforcing the hull with extra shielding. The exotic radiation from the void will start affecting our systems long before we reach the boundary. We need to be ready for anything." Dr. Sungman's voice came over the intercom from the medical bay. "Commander, I'm preparing the emergency medical stations. If we're going into the void, we need to be ready for radiation poisoning, gravitational injuries, and temporal displacement effects." Deho nodded and opened a ship-wide communication channel. "All hands, this is the captain. We have received a distress call from an alien research vessel trapped in the Crimson Void. 37 beings are going to die if we don't help them. I know what the regulations say about this region of space. I know the risks we're taking. But we're human, and humans don't abandon people in need." He paused, looking at his crew. "Anyone who wants to object to this mission can do so now. No one will think less of you for choosing safety over this rescue attempt." The bridge remained silent. Not a single person spoke up or left their station. In that case, Deho continued, let's go save some lives. As the Harmony raced through space, news of their mission began to spread. The ship's communications officer had sent a message to Galactic Command, informing them of the rescue attempt. Within hours, the news reached the council chambers on the capital world. The alien distress signal played one more time, weaker now, but still audible. This is Captain Veltar. Hull breach, in sections 4 through 7. We are losing atmosphere. The children are scared. Please, if anyone is out there, don't let us die alone in this place. Navigator Hyjin looked up from her charts. Commander, we'll reach the Void's outer boundary in 18 hours. I've plotted several possible routes to reach the Whispered Dawn, but all of them require us to pass through areas of extreme gravitational distortion. Can we make it? Deho asked. I don't know, she admitted. The math says no, but humans have never been good at accepting what math tells us is impossible. The Harmony continued its journey through the darkness of space, carrying its crew toward a rescue that everyone said could not be done. Behind them, the galaxy watched and waited to see if humanity would succeed or become another victim of the Crimson Void. Time was running out for the trapped alien crew. But the humans were coming, and when humans decided to help, they had a habit of making the impossible happen. The emergency meeting of the Galactic Council happened faster than anyone expected. Within 6 hours of the human rescue mission announcement, representatives from 47 different species gathered in the Great Chamber on Nexus Prime. The massive room buzzed with worried voices speaking in dozens of languages. Ambassador Unesio stood at the human delegation's platform, her blue diplomatic uniform crisp, despite the rushed nature of the meeting. Around her, the chamber rose in curved levels, each filled with beings from across the galaxy. Some looked like humans, others were completely alien, but all shared the same expression of concern. The Talarian research vessel has been trapped. For 22 hours, Unesio announced, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's sound system. Every hour we wait makes their situation worse. The human ship Harmony is already moving toward the Void to attempt a rescue. The Zephyrian counselor stood up from his seat. His body was made of living crystal that chimed softly when he moved. Ambassador Unesio, your species continues to amaze us with your reckless behavior. The Crimson Void has destroyed over 3,000 ships in the past 100 years. What makes you think one human vessel can do what entire fleets could not? Because we have to try, Unesio replied simply. 37 people are going to die if we do nothing. That is not acceptable to us. The Moralian delegate waved her tentacles in the air, a sign of disagreement in her species. Her thoughts were translated by the chamber's computers. The mathematics are clear. The chance of rescue success is less than 1%. The cost is 1 heavy cruiser and 212 crew members. This is not a logical decision. Unesio's assistant, Minsu, handed her a datapad showing the latest readings from the Crimson Void. The gravitational storms were getting stronger, and the window for any rescue was closing quickly. She looked up at the assembled delegates, representing civilizations that had existed for thousands of years. Logic did not push us to reach the stars, she said quietly. Hope did. Compassion did. The belief that no one should die alone in the darkness of space. The Altarian High Counselor spoke next. His species was one of the oldest in the galaxy, and his voice carried the weight of countless years. Young humans, we have watched the Void claim some of our finest ships. The gravitational forces alone would tear your vessel apart before you could reach the inner regions. Cannot and will not authorize this mission. Then it is fortunate that we are not asking for authorization, Unesio replied, her voice steady. We are informing you of our intention. The Harmony will attempt the rescue whether the Council approves or not. The chamber exploded into noise, as dozens of species began arguing at once. The translation system struggled to keep up with the emotional outburst. Some delegates supported the human position, while others demanded that the rescue be stopped immediately. Council Chairman Dex-47, artificial being who had served for over 300 years, called for order. The Council recognizes the noble intentions of humanity, but we must consider the greater good. One ship cannot be allowed to risk so many lives on such a hopeless mission? Hopeless? Yonacio asked. The Talarians thought their scientific mission was hopeless too, but they tried anyway. That is how progress is made. That is how we learn to be better than we were yesterday. The Corian delegate, a being that looked somewhat like a giant insect, clicked his mandibles together in thought. The humans have been members of this council for only 50 years. Perhaps they do not understand the true dangers of the Crimson Void. We have lost entire research fleets to that region. We understand the dangers perfectly, Yonacio said. We also understand that understanding danger is not the same as accepting defeat. The crew of the Harmony knows they might not come back. They are going anyway. A younger delegate from the Polarian system stood up. I have studied human history since they joined the council. This species has a pattern of attempting impossible tasks and somehow succeeding. Perhaps we should not be so quick to dismiss their efforts. History and physics are two different things, the Zephyrian counselor replied. The Void operates according to laws that do not care about human determination. Yonacio received another message from the Harmony. They had reached the outer edge of the Void and were beginning their approach to the danger zone. She looked around the chamber at faces that represented the wisdom of the galaxy. Honorable delegates, we are not asking you to risk your ships or your people. We're asking you to understand why we must risk ours. In human culture, we have a saying. We leave no one behind. It does not matter if they are human or alien. It does not matter if the rescue is difficult or dangerous. We do not abandon people who need help. The Moralian delegate projected her thoughts again. This emotional attachment to strangers is not logical. The Talarians chose to enter dangerous space. They must accept the consequences of their choices. Consequences of exploration should not be abandonment, Yonacio replied. Every species in this chamber has lost explorers to the unknown. But we explore anyway, because the alternative is to remain forever limited by our fears. The chamber fell silent as the delegates considered her words. Finally, the Altarian High Counselor spoke again. Ambassador, we cannot stop your ship from attempting this rescue. We want it on record that the Council considers this mission to be suicide. And we want it on record that humanity considers abandoning those in need to be a fate worse than death, Yonacio replied. As the emergency session ended without resolution, news of the debate spread across the galaxy. On thousands of worlds, beings watched the news feeds and wondered if the humans would actually succeed in their impossible mission. The Harmony was now deep in the Void's outer regions, fighting gravitational forces that could crush a planet. But the crew pressed on, driven by the simple human belief that some things were worth any risk. The galaxy held its breath and waited to see if hope could triumph over the laws of physics. The moment the Harmony crossed into the Crimson Void, reality became something else entirely. The ship shook violently as invisible forces grabbed at its hull. Through the main view screen, the crew watched space itself twist into impossible shapes. Red energy flowed in directions that should not exist, and stars appeared to move in spirals that made their eyes hurt to follow. Commander Deho gripped the arms of his captain's chair as the ship bucked like a wild animal. All stations, report status, called out over the noise of stressed metal and warning alarms. Science. Officer Tyone struggled to read his instruments as they flickered between impossible readings. Gravitational forces are beyond anything we've ever measured. Space around us is being compressed and stretched at the same time. I'm reading time distortions of up to 6 hours in some areas. Ship's hull groaned as forces that could bend planets pulled at it from different directions. Emergency lights flashed red across the bridge as systems began to overload from the stress. Engineering report, Deho ordered, his voice steady, despite the chaos around them. Bjorn's voice crackled through the intercom from the engine room. Hull integrity is down to 70% and falling. The gravitational shears are playing havoc with our molecular structure. I'm reinforcing the hull with emergency force fields, but I don't know how long they'll hold. Navigator Hyjin worked frantically at her station, plotting a course through the maze of deadly forces. Her hands moved faster than any computer could calculate, using intuition and years of experience to find safe paths through the chaos. Commander, I found a possible route to the Whispered Dawn, but it requires passing through a gravitational lens that's amplifying local distortions by 12 times normal. Can we survive the passage? Deho asked, watching as a section of space on the view screen folded in on itself like paper being crumpled. I honestly don't know, Hyjin admitted, sweat beading on her forehead. The mathematics say it's impossible. But mathematics doesn't account for human stubbornness. The Harmony pushed deeper into the void, its crew working with desperate efficiency. In the medical bay, Dr. Sungmin prepared for casualties, knowing that the strange radiation flooding the ship would have unknown effects on human biology. In the cargo bay, emergency teams prepared the rescue pods that would be used to evacuate the alien crew. I'm getting a signal from the Whispered Dawn, Communications Officer Kyung-ho announced, his voice tight with strain. It's weak, but they're still alive. On the main screen, the image of Captain Veltar appeared through heavy static. The reptilian alien's scales were pale with stress, and his large eyes showed the fear he was trying to hide. Human vessel. You must turn back immediately. The void is claiming us. Do not sacrifice your lives for our mistake. Captain Deho replied, his voice calm despite the ship shaking around him. That's not how humans work. We're coming to get you. Hold on. The Harmony fought its way through gravitational storms that could tear apart moons. Each kilometer forward was earned through the skill of the crew and the stubborn refusal to give up. The ship's sensors showed the Whispered Dawn ahead, trapped in a region where space itself was being twisted into knots. The Talarian ship is caught in what the computer calls a gravitational maze, Tae-young reported. The space around them is constantly changing. What was a safe route 1 minute becomes a death trap the next. How long until we reach them? Deho asked. Current speed for hours, Hyjin replied. But the void is getting more active. I'm reading massive gravitational waves building up in the region ahead. The ship suddenly lurched sideways as a wave of twisted space-time passed through it. Several crew members were thrown from their stations and alarms began screaming throughout the ship. The lights flickered and went out for a moment before emergency power kicked in. Damage report, Deho ordered, helping Tae-young back to his feet. Hull breach on Deck 5. Bjorn reported. Emergency fields are holding, but we've lost main power to that section. I'm rerouting power through backup systems. As they pushed deeper into the void, the forces acting on the ship became more extreme. The crew watched in fascination and terror as space bent around them in ways that violated every law of physics they knew. At one point, they could see their own ship's tail sectioned through the view screen, as if space had been folded back on itself. Captain Veltar is trying to send another message, Kyung-ho said, adjusting his equipment to cut through the interference. The alien captain's image flickered. On the screen again, Human Commander, our hull is failing. We have perhaps 2 hours before a complete structural collapse. The children are frightened. Please, if you cannot save us, at least record our final message for our families. We're not recording any final messages, Deho said firmly. We're going to get you out of there. The Harmony pressed on through the nightmare landscape of twisted space. The crew worked with the precision of a fine instrument, each person knowing that one mistake could doom everyone aboard both ships. They had entered a region where the normal rules of existence no longer applied, where up and down were meaningless. Concepts and time flowed in circles. I'm detecting massive gravitational instabilities ahead, Tae-young warned. The space around the Whispered Dawn is becoming increasingly unstable. If we don't reach them soon, the gravitational forces will tear them apart. Outside the ship, the Crimson Void continued its deadly dance. Energy flowed in impossible directions, creating a light show that was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. The crew of the Harmony had entered a realm where only the most skilled and determined could survive. But they were human, and humans had a long history of going places they were not supposed to go, and surviving things they were not supposed to survive. The rescue was still hours away. But they had already accomplished something remarkable. They had entered the most dangerous region of space, and lived to tell about it. The galaxy watched in amazement as the human ship fought its way through forces that had claimed thousands of vessels before it. Whether they would succeed or fail, they had already proven that some things were worth any risk. The Harmony had been fighting through the Crimson Void for 10 hours when disaster struck. The ship's main engines, pushed beyond their limits by the constant gravitational stress, began to fail. Warning sirens echoed through the corridors as the vessel shuddered to a halt, just 2 kilometers from the Whispered Dawn. Engine containment is critical, Bjorn reported from engineering, her voice strained with exhaustion. The power core is overloading. We have maybe 15 minutes before complete shutdown. Through the view screen, they could see the alien ship clearly now. The Whispered Dawn was twisted and broken, its hull scarred by forces that had compressed entire sections into impossible shapes. Yet somehow, life support was still functioning in the central areas where the survivors waited. Commander Daeho stood at the center of his bridge, surrounded by displays showing system failures throughout his ship. The rescue pods were ready, and loaded with emergency supplies, but without engine power, they might as well be on the other side of the galaxy. Sir Science Officer Tae-young said, his voice carrying a note of desperate inspiration. I have an idea. It's completely insane, but it might work. At this point, insane is all we have left, Daeho replied. What do you have in mind? The gravitational distortions that are killing us. What if we use them to our advantage? If we can create a controlled gravitational collapse using our remaining power, we might be able to create a bridge between the ships. Dr. Sungmin looked up from her medical readings. That would require destabilizing local spacetime. The radiation exposure alone would be lethal to both crews. Only if we fail, Tae-young countered. If we succeed, we create a stable passage. Just long enough for the rescue pods to cross. The theory is sound. Navigator Hyjin was already running calculations on her station. The precision required would be unprecedented. We would need to coordinate the collapse with the void's natural gravitational waves. It's one mistake, and we create a black hole that destroys both ships. The bridge fell silent except for the groaning of the hull and the distant hum of failing systems. Outside, the Crimson Void continued its eternal dance of destruction, beautiful and terrible in its alien majesty. How long do we have before the Whispered Dawn loses life support completely? Daeho asked. 30 minutes, Kyung-ho reported after checking with the alien ship. And how long to set up this gravitational bridge? 28 minutes if everything goes perfectly, Tae-young admitted. The commander looked around his bridge, at faces that had become family over their years together. They had volunteered for this mission knowing the risks. But now he was asking them to attempt something that had never been tried before. All hands, Daeho announced over the ships. Communication system. Prepare for emergency protocol 77 Alpha. We're going to tear a hole in space itself. The crew began their preparations with the calm efficiency of people who had faced death before. Engineers rerouted power from non-essential systems. Scientists calibrated instruments that were never designed for this kind of operation. Medical teams prepared for casualties that might include effects unknown to human medicine. Human Commander, Captain Veltar's voice, crackled over the communication system. Our sensors are detecting massive energy buildups aboard your vessel. What are you attempting? Something that's never been done before, Daeho replied. We're going to punch a hole through space-time itself and pull you through it. There was a long pause before the Tellurian captain responded. In all my years of studying physics, I have never heard of such a thing being attempted by a starship crew.
Captain.
Deho said with a tired smile. "You've never worked with humans before." The Harmony began to glow with exotic energies as its crew prepared to either save 37 lives or create a legend of human failure. Every system was pushed to its absolute limit. The ship's hull plates began to buckle under the stress of containing forces that nature had never intended to be controlled. Gravitational field generators at maximum output, BORAM reported. The containment fields are holding but barely. "We have one shot at this." "Space-time distortion is building," Tae-young announced, its hands moving across controls that sparked with electrical discharge. "The local gravity field is becoming unstable. If we lose control now, both ships will be crushed." Hull began to vibrate with a deep, resonant hum as the ship's modified systems created effects that violated several laws of physics. The crew worked with desperate precision, knowing that one miscalculation would kill everyone aboard both vessels. 10 seconds to optimal gravitational alignment, Tae-young called out. "All departments prepare for reality manipulation." Countdown echoed through both ships as species separated by millions of years of evolution united in a moment of shared tension. The fate of 63 beings rested in the hands of humans who refused to accept the impossible. 5 seconds. Tae-young announced.
4, 3, 2, 1. Activate.
The space between the ships erupted in blinding light as the Harmony's modified systems created a localized tear in reality itself. The effect was simultaneously beautiful and terrifying, a corridor of twisted space-time that connected the two vessels across an impossible distance. For a moment that seemed to last forever, the laws of physics bent to human will. The crew of the Harmony had done something that the greatest minds in the galaxy had declared impossible. They had created a bridge across the void itself. Now they had to use it before it destroyed them all. The gravitational bridge between the two ships held for exactly 47 seconds. In that brief moment, the crew of the Harmony accomplished something that would be studied by scientists for centuries to come. They had torn a hole in the fabric of space-time itself and made it stable enough for rescue pods to pass through. "Bridge is stable," Science Officer Tae-young shouted over the roar of exotic energies. "Launch all pods now." The emergency rescue pods shot through the space-time, tunnel-like bullets fired from a gun. Inside each pod, human rescuers experienced the bizarre sensation of traveling through folded space, where the normal rules of physics no longer applied. They could see the walls of the tunnel rippling with energy that shifted through colors that had no names behind them. The Harmony began to tear itself apart. The gravitational forces needed to maintain the bridge were beyond what any ship had been designed to handle. Plates buckled and twisted. Emergency systems failed one by one as the vessel sacrificed itself to maintain the impossible corridor. "Toll." "Breach on Deck 6, someone called out over the noise. "Power failure in engineering sections A through C, another voice reported. "Radiation levels approaching critical," Dr. Sungmin announced from the medical bay. But the rescue pods reached the whispered dawn, and within minutes, the evacuation began. The Talarian survivors moved quickly through their damaged ship, gathering the injured and the young ones who could not move on their own. Adults and children alike passed through the gravitational tunnel with expressions of amazement and terror. The human rescuers worked with efficient compassion, helping alien beings whose biology they barely understood. Language barriers meant nothing when lives were at stake. They communicated through gestures and shared determination, proving that some things were universal across all species. "First group of survivors coming through," Navigator Hyjin reported, her voice tight with strain as she fought to maintain the tunnel's stability. 15 adults and 7 children safely aboard. The space-time bridge flickered and wavered as the Harmony systems approached total failure. The ship's hull glowed white-hot from the energy coursing through it. In the engine room, Barham worked frantically to prevent a complete power core meltdown that would kill everyone aboard both vessels. "Second group incoming," Hyjin announced. 10 more survivors, including 2 injured crew members. Captain Veltar moved through his dying ship with the dignity of a commander who had accepted his fate. He personally helped the youngest survivors into the rescue pods, speaking softly to them in his own language to keep them calm. The reptilian captain's actions proved that courage and compassion were not limited to humans. The gravitational tunnel began to collapse as the Harmony's field generators finally reached their breaking point. The beautiful corridor of twisted space-time started to flicker like a dying light bulb.
Ow.
Everyone aboard both ships knew they were running out of time. Final pod launching, Hyjin called out, "Captain Veltar is aboard with the last 5 survivors." The Talarian captain's rescue pod emerged from the tunnel just as the Harmony systems finally gave out. The space-time bridge collapsed with a flash of crimson light that lit up the entire void region. The two ships were once again separated by the deadly forces of twisted space, but now they were together in survival. All Talarian survivors aboard and accounted for, Dr. Suman reported from the medical bay. Minor radiation exposure across the board, but everyone is alive. All 37 survivors are safe. The bridge erupted in quiet cheers as the rescue pods were secured and the survivors were taken to medical stations. The crew of the Harmony had done something that the greatest minds in the galaxy had declared impossible. They had created a bridge across reality itself and used it to save lives. Captain Veltar made his way to the bridge of the human ship, moving with the careful dignity of his species. The reptilian commander's eyes held something that transcended the barriers between different forms of life, the recognition of courage and compassion that existed in all thinking beings. "Commander Deho," he said formally, his voice carrying the weight of profound gratitude, "my people owe you a debt that can never be repaid. You have achieved something that we believed was impossible." Captain Deho replied, exhaustion clear in his voice, "We're not finished yet. We still have to get everyone out of here alive." The Harmony was dying around them, its hull cracked and its systems failing. But somehow, the crew's determination remained unbroken. They had torn a hole in reality itself to save strangers. Now, they had to perform one more miracle to get everyone home. The rescue pods were secured in the cargo bay, their human and alien occupants working together to tend to the injured and comfort the frightened. Species that had never met before found common ground in their shared experience of survival. "Engineering report," Deho called out. "Main engines are completely gone," Bjorn replied. "Life support is stable, but we have no way to leave the void under our own power." "Communications working on emergency power only," Kyung-ho reported. "I'm sending a distress signal, but it will take hours to reach the nearest ships." The commander looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. They had accomplished the impossible, but they were still trapped in the most dangerous region of space. The rescue was complete, but the escape had yet to begin. Outside the view screen, the crimson void continued its eternal dance of destruction. But now it held something it had never contained before: hope. The crew of the Harmony had proven that some barriers existed only until someone was desperate enough to break them. They had shattered the heavens themselves to save strangers. Now they had to find a way to live long enough to tell the story. The escape from the Crimson Void became a story that would be told across the galaxy for generations. With the Harmony barely holding together and carrying 63 additional survivors, Commander Deho faced the greatest challenge of his career. The ship was dying around them, but somehow they had to find a way home. "We can't make it out on normal power, Engineer," Borum reported from what remained of the engine room. "The gravitational drag is too strong, and our hull is failing in 12 different places. We need more power than our damaged engines can possibly provide." Science Officer Tae Young, his face pale from radiation exposure, but his mind still sharp, looked up from his calculations. "There is one option left. We could create a controlled explosion of our quantum core, using the energy release to punch through the void's gravitational field. It would be like riding a bomb out of hell itself." Deho asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. 60% if we execute it perfectly, Tae Young replied honestly. 0% if we stay here and wait for the ship to fall apart. The bridge fell silent as everyone understood what they were discussing. They would be deliberately destroying their own ship's power source while surrounded by the most dangerous forces in known space. One small mistake would vaporize everyone aboard both vessels. Captain Veltar, who had been listening quietly from his position near the navigation station, stepped forward. "Commander, On behalf of my people, I must protest. You have already risked everything to save us. We cannot ask you to attempt something so dangerous. You're not asking, Deho replied gently. We're choosing. That's what humans do when people need help. The preparations took 3 hours, during which the harmony continued to deteriorate around them. Hull breaches were sealed with emergency force fields that flickered and sparked, failing. Systems were held together with spare parts and human ingenuity. Throughout it all, the mixed crew of humans and Tellurians worked side by side with desperate efficiency. Navigator Haijin plotted the escape vector with mathematical precision that bordered on art. We'll have exactly 3 seconds of maximum acceleration before the explosion energy dissipates. The trajectory has to be perfect, or we'll be thrown deeper into the void instead of escaping it. All hands prepare for emergency acceleration, Deho announced over the ship's communication system. This is going to be rougher than anything we've experienced so far. In the medical bay, Dr. Sungmin strapped down every patient and secured all equipment. The alien survivors huddled together with the human crew, fear and hope mixing in equal measure. Children of 2 different species held hands as their elders prepared for what might be their final moments. The quantum core explosion lit up the crimson void like a newborn star. The Harmony shot forward on a column of contained nuclear fire, its hull glowing white-hot as it rode the shockwave of its own destruction. The gravitational forces that had held them prisoner were suddenly overwhelmed by the raw power of human desperation and engineering skill. Hull temperature approaching critical levels, BORM reported, her voice barely audible over the roar of the explosion. The outer plating is beginning to melt. 8. Structural integrity at 40%? Taeyong called out. The ship is holding together, but just barely. On the main view screen, the twisted space-time of the void gradually gave way to normal space, where stars shone in their proper colors and the laws of physics worked as they should. The Harmony had escaped from the most dangerous region in the galaxy, though it would never fly under its own power again. All stations report, Deho called out as the ship finally came to rest in the safety of normal space. Life support stable. Across all decks, Dr. Sungmin announced. All survivors accounted for and in good health considering what we've been through. Engines are permanently offline, BORM reported, but we're alive to tell about it. Communications restored, Communications Officer Kyun Ho added with relief in his voice. I'm receiving signals from the rescue fleet. They're 4 hours away and coming fast. The successful rescue had taken 36 hours from start to finish, but its impact spread across the galaxy in minutes. News of humanity's achievement traveled faster than light itself, carried by quantum communication. Networks to every inhabited world, the species that had been dismissed as reckless. Newcomers had accomplished something that the combined wisdom of ancient civilizations had declared impossible. It entered the Crimson Void, rescued trapped survivors, and escaped using methods that challenged everything the galaxy thought it knew about physics. Captain Veltar stood on the bridge of the damaged human ship, surrounded by beings who had risked everything for complete strangers. In his culture, there were ancient words for such courage, but they seemed inadequate to describe what he had witnessed. Commander Deho, he said, with the formal dignity of his species, I have lived for 2 centuries and studied the great achievements of galactic civilization, but I have never witnessed anything as magnificent as what your species accomplished today. You have not just saved lives, you have reminded us all what it means to be truly civilized. The rescue fleet arrived exactly 4 hours later, led by ships from a dozen different species. Word of the successful mission had spread so quickly that representatives from across the galaxy had come to witness the impossible rescue for themselves. As the survivors were transferred to medical ships and the crew of the Harmony received treatment for radiation exposure, the magnitude of their achievement began to sink in. They had not just saved 37 lives, they had changed how the galaxy viewed humanity forever. Ambassador Yanasio arrived aboard the flagship of the rescue fleet, her diplomatic composure barely containing her pride in what her species had accomplished. Commander, the entire Galactic Council is waiting to hear your report. What you've done here will be studied for centuries. We just did what anyone would do, Deho replied, though his exhaustion was evident. We helped people, who needed help. No, Captain Veltar interjected. What you did was prove that the impossible is only impossible until someone refuses to accept it. You have given hope to every explorer in the galaxy. At 6 months later, the Galactic Council would unanimously approve humanity's elevation to the Security Council with full voting rights. The rescue of the Whispered Dawn had demonstrated that sometimes the newest voice in the galaxy was exactly what the oldest, the civilizations, needed to hear. The Harmony itself was preserved as a monument, its twisted hull displayed in the Museum of Galactic Achievement. Visitors from across the known worlds would come to see the ship that had torn a hole in reality itself to save strangers. But for now, drifting safely in normal space with rescue ships all around them, the survivors of 2 species shared a moment of quiet triumph. They had faced the impossible and won, proving that hope, courage, the refusal to abandon others were truly universal values. The stars watched in silence, as they had for billions of years. But now they had witnessed something new, humanity's first step toward becoming legend. In the vast darkness of space, where death was always one mistake away, the crew of the Harmony had proven that some lights could never be extinguished.